A memo about the Memos leaked to WikiLeaks outlining the systematic institutional paranoia which now grips the national government in the wake of the thousands of diplomatic cables being leaked to WikiLeaks has been leaked. So, at some point, the meta-ness of this is going to get out of hand, and everyone is going to forget why they got all bent out of shape in the first place. After nearly a month of protests, strikes, and riots, Tunisia's President Zine El Abidine Ben Ali fled the country with his wife and 5 other family members. Fortunately for them, Ben Ali's wife managed to get away with around 3,000 pounds of gold from the country's central bank, so that should cover them for a few weeks. Tunisians complained about unemployment, food inflation, corruption, and freedom of speech restrictions, just like here in America, except they were also motivated by poor living conditions. Tunisians also seemed unnerved by the notion that the existing government might have been a puppet of the U.S. The ouster of President Ben Ali has put several other regional governments on notice, including Algeria, Jordan, Egypt, Yemen, Mauritania, Saudi Arabia, Sudan, and Albania. Of course, Star Wars enthusiasts are primarily focused on the preservation of the Lars homestead and Mos Eisley spaceport. The political unrest in Tunisia has now bled over into the nation's economy, as there is no word yet on where George Lucas will film the next desert-themed movie. The mass shooting in Tucson, which left 6 dead and 13 wounded, has restarted the debate over gun regulation in the United States. The debate, which seems to be refreshed in earnest every time a beloved celebrity or public official is injured or killed in a so-called senseless shooting, somehow the gun lobby's people kill people argument seems to hold its footing despite the so rare as to be practically unheard of instances of people killing other people without the aid of some weapon or chemical. And when it does happen, the occasions on which there is a single assailant that kills 30 people in the course of a morning with his or her bare hands seems to be restricted to Arnold Schwarzenegger movies. The high schools of Cherokee County, Georgia, thank goodness, will continue to have their graduation ceremonies in the First Baptist Church in Woodstock, Georgia, which seats 7,500. These are public schools. Americans United for the Separation of Church and State threatened to sue the Cherokee County School Board over the vote, which took place in January and resulted in a unanimous decision in favor of using the church as the venue for the school's graduations. Of course, Baptists account for less than 60% of Cherokee County, so the county's Lutherans, Catholics, and so-called others are sure to feel comfortable and welcomed in the Baptist megachurch. Somehow, the notion of representative government seems to have failed to catch on, as, with a less than 60% Baptist representation, one would think that a board of as few as 3 people should show some sort of dissent. Oh well, it's only public funding, religion, and education. It's not like it's something important, like gun rights. Upon his inauguration, Alabama's new governor, Robert Bentley, remarked from a church pulpit that only Christians were his brothers and sisters. Remind me to skip Alabama the next time I go on a big road trip. While Governor Bentley apologized for the remark after a nationwide furor blew up over the sectarian stupidity, many throughout the state either remarked that there was nothing wrong with his remark, or that it may not have been well advised, but there was still no need to apologize. There was a time when the Bible Belt had a buckle. It seems to have devolved into a tired length of manila rope, and Alabama is the Jethro Bodine knot. So the U.S. Air Force Academy is having its National Prayer Luncheon in February, and it has invited a fellow named Cleve McClary to address those in attendance, some of whom will be under something called constructive orders. McClary is a former Marine lieutenant who suffered debilitating injuries in Vietnam, having lost his left eye and left arm. He is decorated and generally regarded as a war hero. Former Lieutenant McClary has made a career for himself as a motivational speaker, but he doesn't just offer general motivation, he offers fundamentalist Christian motivation. By many accounts, including McClary's own, his message is very focused on encouraging a particular variety of Christianity. In short, it is a sectarian and divisive kind of Christianity. The invitation of McClary to speak at the prayer luncheon has raised the concern of over 100 people at the Academy who have contacted the Military Religious Freedom Foundation, which has since demanded that the superintendent of the Academy rescind former Lieutenant McClary's invitation to speak at the luncheon. As of production time, there is no word yet as to the Academy's response, if any. Well, what would you expect? They have the B-2 bomber. What do we have? A shotgun? They win, don't you think? Joel Osteen, the blinkiest millionaire televangelist to never have attended seminary, appeared on the show CNN has put up to replace Larry King Live. As Osteen visibly struggled to keep his blinking under control, he revealed to Morgan that he never attended seminary, that he's not rich, he's blessed, that he has no capacity whatsoever to directly answer a simple question, that homosexuality is a sin, and Elton John is a sinner. Normally, Christian preachers keep the homosexuality is a sin rhetoric inside the church and leave it to the flock to say it on the outside world. After generally declaring homosexuality a sin, too tightly wrapped Osteen and his lovely wife, Victoria, spent a couple minutes swirling around in a vortex of self-negating circumlocutionary backpedaling after Morgan personalized the issue by focusing the question of Morgan's friend Sir Elton John. Ultimately, the Osteens performed the most favored moral Tai Chi move among pious frauds backed into an uncomfortable moral or ethical corner. Blame the scripture. I'm not judging. God is. There is a word which requires consideration. It is a word which even the most respected and objective commentators don't dare utter publicly, no matter how rarefied and clinical the context. The closest they come to saying it is to utter the phrase N-word. Such extreme Baudelarization paralyzes our ability to engage in meaningful objective dialogue. I'm going to use the word in a story about censorship. I am not going to use the word as a descriptor or label for any one person or group of persons. If you are so thin-skinned that you can't bear to hear the word uttered, even in that context, please stop watching and don't ever come back. The word is neighbor. A recently revealed letter from the Vatican to Ireland's Catholic bishops instructed them to keep mum about suspected child abuse cases. And when did this letter arrive? 1997! Yes, during the papacy of the much-revered and probably soon-to-be sainted Pope John Paul II. The corruption doesn't just go all the way to the top, it also goes all the way to the bottom. The bottoms of tens of thousands of Irish children going back to the 1930s. Of course, all of this good the church is doing only distracts from the question of whether the most basic claims of the church are factually true. The Pope, in his finite wisdom, has announced that marriage is not a universal right. The concern? It's not men humping men or anything like that. It's annulments. That's right. See, the Catholic Church doesn't recognize divorce as a legitimate dissolution of a marriage sanctified by the Church. The only way for the Catholic Church to permit a marriage to end, other than the death of one of the spouses, is annulment. And that depends on the marriage not being consummated. The Pope said it is important for priests to discern whether the would-be spouses are prepared and able to enter into a valid marriage. And who would be better equipped to counsel heterosexual couples seeking to marry than a celibate middle-aged man in a dress, who may very well be a closeted homosexual? The Pope, that's Benedict XVI, has announced that modern politicians should look to Joan of Arc as a behavioral model. Listen to the weird auditory hallucinations and act on them as if they were direct instructions from God. Yeah, that'll help. Besides, it seems as though we already have plenty of political leaders listening to the voices in their heads. Cheers!